Hello everyone, welcome to this library session for OM 515. I'm University Librarian Laura Rock, and we're going to start this session by talking about a literature review. As part of your research methods class, it's required that you design a research project of your own, but it just doesn't pop up out of nowhere. Research is on a continuum that follows what we like to call a scholarly conversation. And so all the articles and research that were done prior to your study are the backbone for your study. They support the undertaking of your study. And the way that you do that is you do a literature review. So as you go out there and you search for articles that are relevant to your research question, you'll begin to pull them all together and make sense. And as you make sense, you're going to see different themes arising, that aspects of that topic that you need to support the argument for your new research. So I think it's important to note that it's not as if you're going to just run a single search in a database and retrieve everything you need. You're going to have to refine and maybe ask multiple questions. Or I shouldn't say maybe, you will be asking multiple questions. Also to consider that none of this research in the literature review is discussed in isolation. What you need to do is create a synthesis amongst the different research articles. So when you look at the different themes that emerge, I have a pink, an orange, a green, a blue. You'll notice that there's conversation bubbles going on. And so these represent the different articles. And sometimes they'll be in complete agreement as far as outcome and thinking, and we see that in the orange aspect. But when we look at the green one, they're totally disparate. They're all over the place. And when we look at the pink conversation, we notice that it's sort of, sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't. And when we look at the conversation between the green and the blue, we'll notice that an article can touch on more than one aspect. So you'll be mentioning that research, those authors, not only when you discuss it in the subsection under the green, you'll be discussing the same article, using it again in the subset under the blue. So again, I hope I'm getting across the point that this is a synthesis, a story that you're weaving, that nothing is talked about in isolation. You want to see how these different research conversations come together. One of the things that distinguishes a research article from other types of articles is that they undergo what is known as the peer review process. Peer review is part of the editorial process, and by peer review we mean a panel of experts examine the article and critique it, looking for things such as, does the methodology that was used to study that question appropriate for that particular question? Or is there like a cohesiveness throughout the whole entire paper, so that what they're saying in the discussion section matches to the results that they happen to be reporting? They look to see if it's cited properly, and because they're very familiar with the literature in or surrounding this topic, they're really good barometers for any types of plagiarism. So those are just some of the things they look for, but at the end they make their recommendations to the editor, either to accept or reject the article, and if they reject it, they will usually recommend sending it back to the author for revision, and the process starts all over again. So to get published in a peer-reviewed journal really, as a peer-reviewed article, really is a mark of quality. But as I said, not all articles in a peer-reviewed journal get peer-reviewed. And understanding the different types of articles in a peer-reviewed journal is not necessarily clear to everyone if you haven't read a lot of literature. So there's primary literature and secondary literature, and literature reviews and systematic reviews, and then there's different sections of the articles that can help you identify whether or not you're looking at a research article. So that can take a lot of analysis to actually look at it and to get a feel for it. So I created a separate tutorial that you can use to become a little more familiar as you go into your research methods course. So it doesn't duplicate what you're learning there. It's really, I think, a precursor of knowledge that I think you should have. So if you're not familiar with these different aspects, take a look at the tutorial. It's interactive, and I posted it up on Blackboard for you. And one of the questions I have for all of you is, how familiar are you with our library resources? And basically, how comfortable are you using our library resources? Because I think my primary goal is at the end is for you to understand that I too am a resource. And my hope is that you'll feel comfortable approaching me with questions you might have. Because we're going to look at the library homepage and different types of resources and the value of resources and how to search resources and how to organize our research using RefWorks. But most importantly, recognize that the librarian is a resource who's available to you. So when you go to find your research articles, you have a few options available to you. And I want to talk to you about the differences and the similarities between these two options that I can see, either the internet or an article database. So one of the reasons people are attracted to the internet is because it's fairly simple to search. You just go ahead and you enter your natural language, a sentence, and something pops up and retrieves. Now, the difference with an article database is that you have to construct a search strategy and use research techniques to retrieve the articles that you want. Now, I'm going to show you how to do that, and I think you're going to find that that part of it's not really that hard. It's the finesse in using your results to go ahead and discover what you can learn to improve your search. And sometimes we even have to, once we read our articles, revise our searches based on the new knowledge that we have. But that's basically true no matter where you find your article. So both of them allow you to discover articles, but not all of the articles are of the same variety. So most of the articles you're going to find out on the internet may be those that are published from an open access model. And that's a publishing model that makes articles freely available to the public. And that's a very good thing. And sometimes you'll find some really older content freely available. But most articles, research articles, are published in peer-reviewed journals that follow the traditional publishing model, and that model is for fee. You pay for a subscription, and those subscriptions are included in the library databases. So it's a privilege to have access to these MU resources. So I want you to take advantage of your information privilege. And that's not to say that finding information out on Google Scholar, and I mentioned Google Scholar over regular Google because Google Scholar indexes scholarly literature. But sometimes the content you discover on Google might not be available full text out there on Google, but we might have it in the library. So even if you don't find it using the article databases, you're still going to want to use our library resources to find the full text. And if we don't have the full text, we can get articles to you through a service called Interlibrary Loan. And we will take a look at that as we proceed. So if the database can't be asked a question, how does it retrieve the article that you want? Well, I think the key to understanding this is to understand how the database is organized. And so the database is organized by placing information, words, word phrases, into indexable fields. And so if you look at the image, you'll see to the right of the search box a list of fields that the database has. There are a lot of them. But by default, the database will search, in most databases, the author, the title, the subject, and the abstract fields. This is so you get the most relevant results from your search. But the key point is that you're searching these words or phrases within the field. The words or phrases you ask it to search is what's going to be retrieved. And so it's something like the game Battleship. You put in the word, when it finds a match, it's like it's a hit, and it retrieves the article. What I previously described to you is known as a keyword search, and there's no real meaning in the database to the keyword other than it matches a particular field. But there's another way to search a database based on what we call the subject fields, the subject headings, because these are what we call a controlled heading in that it talks about the aboutness of an article, where an indexer actually reads the article, determines what it's about, looks into this index and says, this defined index, and it says, well, all articles that are about vaping come under electronic cigarettes. So that if I were to search the subject field electronic cigarettes, it would bring me up articles on vaping. And so that's another way to search a database, and it's a very precise way to search. But it can be hard for people to determine what that subject heading is. Now, if you happen to match any of the words in the subject heading when you're doing a keyword search, you can also retrieve those articles. To give you a better sense of this, I wanted to show you the detailed record. When you click on the title in the database, it produces the detailed record. And so this record represents the article in the database. And here you can see all of the different fields, the author, the document type, the abstract, the title. And so when I enter my terms, you'll see where it highlights those keywords that I put in, and it retrieves them. Now, I mentioned the subject field, and so here you can see where electronic cigarettes was the subject term that was retrieved. And so you'll notice it's highlighted because the database has a special feature that helps to map any of your keywords to subject terms if they happen to there happens to be a mapping. So we'll know that because the entire subject term is highlighted, electronic cigarettes. But if I had searched on, say, cigarettes, it would still retrieve that subject term because it would highlight the word cigarettes. Next, we're going to discuss some basic search techniques we can use when we go into those article databases. They're Boolean operators, phrase searching, truncation, and nesting. Boolean operators are the way we connect those keyword terms together in a database. And we use and, or, and sometimes we use not. We use and when we want to search the different aspects of our research question together. So we take our two different concepts, in this case electronic cigarettes and the legislation surrounding cigarettes, joining it with that Boolean and so that we can focus in our results set and as a result get very relevant results. Of course, when we put the two terms together like this, it will decrease our results set because it must contain both search terms in the article. So it's just that little shaded portion of articles we would retrieve. Now sometimes we want to grow our search and we want to combine our terms together that are synonyms or related terms. So perhaps electronic cigarette or vaping. And this serves to grow our search. The results set should increase because the retrieved records must contain at least one of those terms. Not is an operator of exclusion. So if I search smoking not cessation, it's going to exclude all those smoking articles that talk about cessation. You just have to be careful because if it talks about different aspects of smoking other than cessation, it's going to exclude those articles too, because it can't have that term in there. Truncation is when we search the root of a word to sort of expand our reach of articles, so that we take the word, the root of the word, and use a symbol such as an asterisk at the end. And so manage, in this case, truncated, would search for manage, manager, manages, managing, management. So this expands our keyword search. And you would have to look at the help section of the database to be sure, but the one I'm going to show you uses the asterisk. Now, phrase searching searches words adjacent to each other. So if you're looking for a phrase, you want to make sure you use those double quotations. Otherwise, the database might search those terms separately and join them with an assumed and between them. So you don't want that. Nesting is our next technique, and that's about overriding the natural order of operations in the database. So certain Booleans operate first, and by default most operate the AND first and then go on to the OR. So if I had the same string of words together and I had e-cigarettes or electronic cigarettes and safety, electronic cigarettes and safety would operate first, and it would take that subset of articles and then OR in all articles about e-cigarettes. Well, you can see that's not going to help us focus in on our research question. So what you want to do is take those similar terms or related terms and put them between parentheses. So if we were to put e-cigarettes or electronic cigarettes between parentheses, it would do the OR operation first and then add in safety, achieving what we want. This is important to understand, particularly when you encounter a database that just presents with a singular search box. Today we're going to be looking at one of the EBSCO databases, and EBSCO has an advanced search as well as some other databases that when you keep each concept that you're searching on a separate line and then just OR in your similar terms all on the same line, then it keeps track of that nesting for you. You don't have to worry, and I'll show you that when we go into the database. So once we determine what our research question is going to be, we have to break that question out into the keyword concepts. So how has the use of people analytics improved employee retention? So I can't stick the sentence in, as I said before, so I pull out those keywords, people analytics, employee retention, and then I have to go another step further and think about other ways we can represent those keywords. Because when we go into the database, I might talk about it one way, an author may talk about it another. So think about how we might grow our search based on those keywords. So we're going to go out into the databases and explore some of the resources to get us to this point, and then we're going to do a sample search. So when you're signed into the MU portal, there's a quick link on the left that will take you directly to the library. Alternatively, you can go to library.misericordia.edu. And if you're not familiar with the orientation of the library homepage, I have about a 20-minute tutorial that goes into great depth about the homepage and our resources, and I'll post that up in Blackboard. But I'm just going to use the search box today to demonstrate how I might go through a search. Now, when I begin my research, I usually start with a topic, and it's a broad topic, and if we go into an article database with too broad of a topic, we're just going to get too many results, and this doesn't help to develop your thesis. So you have to develop a searchable research question first. So we showed you that in the last slide that we had, but how did I get there? One of the things you can do is to consult some background sources of information. So even though ultimately you want articles, generally we start with book resources, reference books, or textbooks to fill in any gaps of knowledge we have about our topic and to help us find an aspect to perhaps research. And I also use this to look for keywords when I'm going to be doing my searches. So it does play an important role, and you don't want to skip that. Now you can search the MU catalog for the physical books that we have or any ebooks that we own. You can also use OneSearch, and OneSearch searches subscription resources. So these will all be electronic. So we have far many more ebooks by subscription than we do by purchase. If I'm looking for an ebook, OneSearch is a good place to go. When you're searching OneSearch, since you're searching across all of our databases, the results can be quite cumbersome, and I'm generally instructing people how to use individual databases at a time. There are, advantages to doing that, and I talk about it in that 20-minute video. But I want you to keep in mind when you search OneSearch that if you just put your terms in, and I'm going to search on my topic now. I started an interest in people analytics. And if I were to enter this into this OneSearch, it puts an automatic and between my terms. So you see how many results I got. So I'm going to go ahead and put an and in between. And you'll see I got the same number of results. Now I'm looking at people analytics as a phrase. So I want to make sure in this case I'm putting it between the double quotes. Okay, and so you could see that the searching a phrase really reduced that result set. Now on the left-hand side, you can limit to the type of content you want, and this is great for searching for an article if you really don't know where to start or you can't find anything, because if I limit to journal articles, it'll link me out to the full text in the database where this article can be found. And so that might be a key about which database to use if you're not getting good results. So if I link out, this is in Hein Online. So if I click there, this is the database. So maybe there's more articles in that database. So I'm going to go back to my results, because primarily I teach people how to use individual databases. So we're going to be doing that today, but I like to show people that they can access ebooks here. And so if you click on the ebook limiter, now I can go out to the full text online of this ebook and I can read it online. And again, I have an entire tutorial on just using this ebook platform. So if you want to learn more, I mean, there's a lot of intuitiveness, but there's more to learn. But my point in talking about it is in getting the background information. So perhaps you're looking through and you see something of interest, and I'm looking at retention analytics to protect your investment. So I can learn more about it. And as I'm reading through the text, I'm looking for different terminology that I might be able to use. And so that's how I might fill in that chart we were talking about earlier. Now you'll notice when I clicked on the OneSearch tab, you got additional links below in white. And one of the things you can look at is the databases by subject. And as you scroll through, of course, there's ones on for business. And in our handout, I've narrowed down to some databases I think that are useful for the subject of management. You can look through, and some of them are in here, obviously, but this list is a little bit bigger. But I want to bring your attention down here to reference. These are the handbooks, encyclopedias, and dictionaries that I was talking about to get background information. And a really good one you might want to use is Credo. And I'm just going to link out there quickly. Again, you can search this like any other database. I might want to look up information on analytics. And so that's broad, and if I don't find what I need, I can add in under other terms. And I'm going to put human resources. This is how this database works, and you can take some time to look through that. And of course, it depends on the subject that you're actually researching. But I just wanted to point a few of them out. Another one I really like is Sage Knowledge. So if I run a search for people analytics, okay, I could find some relevant titles. Now it looks like it's all the same book, and this is what I want to point out to you, that if you expand works and selections, you're getting chapters within books. If you just want to look at the books that are available, deselect that, and then you can look at the particular books that might be useful. Okay, now going back. It's primarily my databases A through Z list that I want to get to my individual databases. Click on that. Here's an alphabetical listing of all of our databases. When you look at the handout that I gave you, I have a list of databases you might want to look at. One of them is Academic Search Ultimate. And that's a multidisciplinary database. So it indexes journals from a lot of different disciplines. On there is SpringerLink, Wiley, Sage. But their other databases are subject specific. So we're going to be searching today in Business Source Premier. I'm going to scroll down, and this is how you would access that database. Before we start to search, now we want to think about expanding that grid that I talked about earlier. So have you thought of some terms we can use for people analytics? Well, if you haven't, here's one good use you might make of the doing a Google search. So I'm just going to pop over, and I'll just type in people analytics. And here, people analytics, also known as talent analytics or HR analytics. Those are some terms that we can use. Now, through my background information, I also found workforce analytics. And also in my background information, as I was searching, not on the internet, but within that book I showed you, employee retention is the aspect of the analytics that I want to look at. And so employee retention can be employee attrition or voluntary turnover. If you look at that handout, I filled out the grid for you. Now we're going to go ahead to enter those terms into the database. Let's start by entering people analytics once again. And it works the same in this database, so that when I put it between double quotes, I go from 200, in this case 281 results, down to 122. Okay, so now I want you to go ahead and in retention and see what you get. What do you think the database is going to do? And now we're down to 5. Things are looking pretty grim, but you have your grid that you generated. So let's grow our search by adding in the synonyms. Let's go to HR analytics. Or workforce analytics. Or talent analytics. And run a search. Okay, so maybe the problem with the search is in the word retention. Let's go ahead and type in attrition. It's the opposite, right, of retention, but that's what it's a related term. Or turnover. Now you'll notice I didn't put in employee turnover or voluntary turnover like I have in my chart. And depending on the results that I get, I might want to go back and do that. Basically though, if I'm just doing a keyword search, if the word voluntary turnover is in there, the word turnover, it's going to be a hit in our game of Battleship here. So let's see what happens. Okay, and here we see we do have some improvement. However, I think we can still do better. Let's click on the title of the first article. It seems from the title that it's on point. And as we look through the detailed record, we can see where our terms have highlighted our keyword that we entered. And we can also take a look at the article full text because it has the PDF. But what I'm interested in looking for is how I can actually improve my search. And as I look through, I want to pay attention to those subject headings. And so here it's used data analysis as the primary subject heading. And that's giving me some clue to this subject headings index in this database. So I'm going to go ahead and enter it as a keyword term. And run a search. And that significantly improved our result set. Now I want to further narrow down to other parameters I have. So a lot of times when we're looking for something that's related to evidence-based application, we want things maybe within the last 5 years that we want to take a look at. So I don't really want any articles back to 1933. I'm going to be looking at everything from, say, 2014 forward. And of course, that's arbitrary. Can't tell you that definitively. You look at the parameters of the assignment and your research topic, but I just wanted you to be aware of how that works. Then we're going to select academic journals to get to that peer-reviewed content. So it's going to eliminate articles that are in magazines, trade publications, and newspapers. Although, like I said, not everything will be primary research articles. And again, I encourage you to do that tutorial in Blackboard. Now you also want to limit to English language articles because sometimes the abstracts and the titles are in English, but the actual articles are not. So that can be deceiving in this discovery phase. But now I'm down to 321 articles. And what I didn't do is limit to things that are just full text, because if we don't have an article in this database, we can look and see if we have it in another database. So I'm just going to scroll through and see something that catches my eye. All right, I'm just going to try to link out and see if we have this article since we don't have it full text. And it's linking me out to the Wiley database. And Wiley is another very good database for management topics. And a lot of our journals are in there. So we're going to take a look at that in a little bit. But it's linked me out to that Wiley database to get the full text. I can just click on the PDF and have full access. What I want to do is find an article that we don't have full text. And I'm going to go back. And let's try this one. And indeed, we do not have this one available full text in any of our databases. It linked out to this page where it said, sorry, it's not available. And you have to go down into this small blue lettering and click on request this article via Tipasa. And when you're doing this through the database, it populates for you and it saves you a lot of time. And you can just go ahead and enter the issue number. If there isn't one, put in 1234. We have one though, so we'll skip that step. And then choose your department and then the date The needed before date is really a cancellation date. So if you have several weeks to work on this article, you don't want to put tomorrow because it would just cancel tomorrow. Decide when the usefulness would no longer be present and then enter your cancellation date. Go to the bottom and submit your request. Receipt of an article is not guaranteed, but you will receive an email either way. If you do receive the article, you'll have the opportunity to view it 5 times within 30 days, whichever comes first. So you want to make sure you download and save the article. Please allow a minimum of 7 days to submit your article and receive it. It may come in sooner, but it's dependent upon having other libraries fill that request for us if they can fill the request. So make sure you submit for your articles early. I'd like to take a further look at some of these database tools. By clicking on the title, I get back to that detailed record, and I want to show you the tools on the right. I want to highlight the permalink. If I click on that permalink, here I have the URL to get me back to the article. So if you want to share this with someone or even keep it for yourself, this is how you will get back to it. What's up in the address bar is temporary, and that will go away. So you won't see that anymore once you close out the browser, so you can't get back to the article. You can also use the cite feature over on the right. So when you're doing your citation, you can scroll through and find the appropriate style and copy and paste it into your document. You want to make sure it's correct for the style. You can't rely on these generators 100% because they do make errors, but they do give you a good running start. Even better at giving you a running start is when you go ahead and export the citation and then put it into your own personal database called RefWorks. So RefWorks is that citation manager that if you click Save, it's going to take you to that database. And we want the new version. And I'm already signed in, so I'm going to sign out just to show you. So when you would click that, it would ask you to sign in. And if you don't have an account, create an account. Since I already have one, I'll just enter my MU email address because that's what you use when you sign up, and then whatever password you chose. And when you import something into RefWorks, it goes into the last imported folder. So I'm just going to go back and resend it because I want you to see that process. Export, save to RefWorks, we're signed in, using new RefWorks, and it's importing. And they save the document to my library, and I say OK. And here's that last imported folder. Things stay in that last imported folder for 30 days. But usually what you want to do is go ahead and put it into a meaningful folder. So if you look over on the left and expand my folders, you can create a folder. And I'm going to call this one HC, let's see, now I'm going to call it OM 515 Spring 2020. So something meaningful to you. So now that I have a folder, so let's look through. There it is. And if you look closely, you'll see that it has 0 articles in it right now. You'll see some of these other folders have articles in them. Well, here's how they got there. You go up to the last imported folder. You select the citation. And then you go up to the top and assign it to a folder. So the next time around, that folder will already be there. You just go up to the top, select the folder, and apply. And if you look down now, my OM515 Spring 2020 has 1 article in it. And I'll click on that. And there it is. Now, let's see the power of this database to help us create bibliographies. I'm going to select a folder that I have a lot of entries in. And so as you do your research, you'll be sending your articles here to save them. And let's go ahead and go now up to the top to create a bibliography. Now I could select all the references in this list. And perhaps I didn't use this article, so I'll deselect it. But I go up to the top to create my bibliography. And there you have it. Now you have to pay attention to what style is being used. So up here on the top, mine is already selected for APA 6th. So depending on what style the syllabus tells you you need to use. But as you scroll through, if you don't see styles, you can just look them up. So we're not using MLA here, but suppose we were, we can choose MLA, and it would do it in MLA style. So that's how you use RefWorks. You just copy this, the whole entire clipboard, and paste this into your paper. So you might have to go ahead and clean it up, as we can see how the spelling is here. So you might want to go ahead and clean that up. But that's the basics to using RefWorks. I'm going to go back to my folder, and I'm going to click on the title of this particular entry. And over on the right, we get a section that we can go ahead and edit some of the fields in here. So by clicking on the pencil, you can make changes. So if something is wrong, you can go in and change it. Okay? And make sure you save, and it will save permanently. So this is a really nice feature to have. Another thing you can do is go ahead and add an attachment. So suppose you got an article, interlibrary loan. It's not in one of our databases. You could go ahead and then you could choose it from wherever you saved it, and you can upload it and have it here all in one place, which I think is really nice. Go back to the top, and I want to, let's see, I want to get rid of this. I'm going to click cancel, and I'm going to exit out. Now a lot of times when it's in the database, the link will be there too. So I'm trying to find one where I have the link to the article. So here, full text via 360 link. Let's see if we can get back to the article. Well, this one we didn't have either. But if we did, the 360 link would allow you to get directly back to that article. And here it is. So either attach it if it's not there, or link out to it. RefWorks is a great tool for keeping yourself organized. I hope you'll give it a try. Before we leave this detailed record in this database, Business Source Premier, I want to talk further about the Subject Headings Index. In my PowerPoint, I showed you how vaping mapped to electronic cigarettes. I also showed you that we can find other keywords to search on by looking at the subject terms in a relevant article. That's how we got data analysis. But as I explained, the subject terms are about the aboutness of the article. It's not about just looking for terms. These headings are predefined, and it's up here in the blue menu. In this database, it's called a thesaurus. Sometimes it will be called subject headings list. But if we go ahead and search the thesaurus, and let's put in people analytics, and we might not get anything. So I didn't find anything in here. So there was no direct match or mapping. So it wouldn't map based on that term. So perhaps we make it shorter and we just put in analytics. And here it tells us for analytics that we use data analysis in this database. I'm going to select it, and we also see there's some other terms like software analytics. But when we click on the actual heading, we get a definition. Here's the scope of data analysis. Here are entered works on converting raw data into useful form through study and interpretation. And the broader term is descriptive statistics. Narrower term is business analytics. So that might have been another heading that would be useful. And we use it for data analysis or analytics. When I put those terms in, it should map if I would put those terms into this heading. This can be a little tricky to discover, but you are able to go in and search it and look for meaningful headings. This is how it works. I showed you how to use it as a keyword. If I select it and add it to the search box, it now appears in the search box with this these field codes, DE. And so that's telling me that it is a subject heading term, and we're searching on the subject heading. So let's do a search. And I got a little over 25,000 articles. If I were to search the same terms, not the subject heading, just data analysis, do you think I will get the same results? Well, let's see. And you can see I got quite a bit more. And that's because it's just looking for that terminology, not the aboutness of the article. So that's why I got more terms that way. So just to go back, if I click on this title, you'll see it's within the subject headings. When you're actually in a database and you find one, you can actually run the subject search right from these subject terms. So if I click on it here, it's running it. You see the DE as a subject heading. When we did our search earlier, I went in and put it back as a keyword. So let's see what happens. So this is a subject heading, this is a keyword. Sometimes you want to run it both ways. Sometimes articles aren't assigned that, but they might be relevant. Sometimes you want to do it more ways, but the subject heading is more about the content of the article. And as you can see, it grew back to what I did earlier. So this would be a little less focused. So you can do it both ways, or you can just click in and run the search right from your result. So I hope that you find that helpful, not too confusing. So it doesn't hurt to do it this way, but it's more precise as to content this way. So sometimes you have to do both. I hope that helps. And I will also mention that if you are within the article and you run a subject heading search, you can add in other keywords. So you could just add in your other terms like people analytics and go to the next line with your other concept and continue to run searches. Okay, and so that is another way to go about searching. Now, as we look at our saved searches, have you noticed that it's been nesting for us? See the parenthesis there? It's been doing it behind the scenes because we kept each concept on a separate line in the advanced search box. I want to go through and find a keyword search, and I'm going to copy it. As we go over to another database, we're going to look at the Wiley database next. So I'm back on the home page. I go to one search, databases A through Z, and now I want to show you the Wiley database. And notice how it presents with this simple search box. It does have an advanced search box, but it works a little bit differently. Okay, so I find actually that it's easier to know the nesting in this particular box. That's me though. So I'm just going to go back to the simple search box and enter my terms, my keyword terms. And I just need to make a little adjustment for that space that's in between the parenthesis that I copied and pasted. So you'll look at the beginning. Here's data analysis or people analytics or HR analytics or workforce analytics. And it's all, let's see, go to talent analytics, and it's all between those parentheses. Then I anded in retention or attrition or turnover. So it's all there, and I'm going to run a search. So I utilize what I could get out of one database to go into this database, make my life a little easier. So I have quite a few articles, and the limiters work a little bit differently in this database. So I can limit to journals, books, or reference works, and I'm looking for articles, so I'm going to click on journals. And as I scroll through, I have a date limiter. So perhaps I can, use 2014, or it allows me to actually choose within the last 5 years here, or a week, a month, 6 months. I'm not going to take a survey right now. Oh, I don't want to. No thanks. And as I scroll through, I want to show you these subjects. This is the way I would perhaps try to narrow down in this database. Business and management. And I'm going to, you could limit to the subtopics. Here's human resource management. So I'm just going to limit that way. So you see how I drill down using the limiters to get to a smaller result set in this database. And so it works a little differently than one of the EBSCOs. And notice it announces to me this is a special issue article. This is an editor introduction. So I'm looking through and I want to find a research article. So here we have an original article. That would be a research article. Sometimes different journals label them differently, so I actually have to click in and evaluate what kind of article that I'm looking at. But that's how that would work. Now I want to show you that you can get the PDF here. You can also use the tools. And under the tools, you can export the citation and scroll down, and there's an option for RefWorks. So maybe in different places, in different databases. I'm going to download that now. And now this should look familiar. I continue. And now the one I just did a few seconds ago, I'm going to select, go up, and assign it to my OM folder. And now if I look at my folder, OM has 2 articles in it. So you can see how this can come in handy as you go from database to database. Well, that concludes our library session. I hope you found something useful in this web session. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and ask. My email is lrock@misericordia.edu. This semester, I have open office hours on Tuesday evenings from 6 until 8:30 and Wednesday during the day from 9 until 1. Otherwise, feel free to email me and I'll get back to you in my next business day. I'm usually here Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 on most days. So I look forward to working with you further in the semester.